Yo, we are back with a new part of the Gods of Yu-Gi-Oh! Today we are going to look at one of the darkest characters in the Yu-Gi-Oh! Universe, Zorc Nechrophades. For many of you he might seem like just another villain, but if you look closer you will see that there's much more to him. Zorc is much more than pure evil, so let's dive deep into the dark mythology of Yu-Gi-Oh! And find out what makes Zorc so unique. Let's start with the inspiration behind Zorc. Unlike many other gods in Yu-Gi-Oh! Who are clearly based on Egyptian deities, Zorc is a bit more mysterious. There's no obvious connection between him and a specific Egyptian god. But what's really interesting is the possible link to Greek mythology. The name Necrophades could be a combination of two Greek words, necro, meaning death, and Hades, the Greek god of the underworld. This already makes Zorc quite special, because while Yu-Gi-Oh! Is heavily influenced by Egyptian mythology, Zorc breaks this rule and offers an unexpected link to Greek mythology. This also fits well with his character, as Zorc is described in the series as the Lord of the Underworld, a title usually assigned to Hades. It's almost as if Zorc was given elements from another mythology to create an ultimate villain who was more ancient than the Egyptian gods. This gives him a unique place within the world of Yu-Gi-Oh!, making him a character that goes beyond the typical boundaries of good and evil. You could say that Zorc doesn't just represent evil, he also embodies the deepest fears and inevitable darkness that have existed in every culture and era. Zorc's origin story is dark and fascinating. He was created from humanity's own darkness, a kind of reflection of the negative energy lying dormant in people's hearts. And instead of lessening this darkness, Zorc only amplified it. He became, so to speak, the engine of evil in the world, drawing out humanity's darkest instincts and driving people to the most extreme means, such as wars and destruction. A key figure in Zorc's story is the mysterious Millennium Script. Zorc may have created the Book of the Millennium Script, an ancient manuscript that served as a guide to creating the Millennium Items. These items, like the Millennium Ring and the Millennium Puzzle, are infused with dark magic that allows their holders to make pacts with dark spirits from the beyond. It's heavily implied that Zorc planned all this, intending one day to be freed by someone who carries the necessary darkness within. This book, the Millennium Script, has existed since times that were considered ancient, even 3000 years ago. It was the cause of many bloody wars in ancient Egypt, and all this could have been part of Zorc's plan to increase chaos and darkness in the world. Perhaps he wanted to shape a specific person, someone like Akhenaten, who was corrupted by darkness and willing to create the Millennium Items that would bring Zorc's power into the world. Zorc knew he had to be patient until the time was right and someone with enough darkness in their heart emerged to fulfill his plan. Zorc was not just a passive dark force operating in the background. He had a direct influence on some of the most important characters in the series, pulling the strings to achieve his goals. Take Akhenaten for example, the first to decipher the Millennium Script. Akhenaten's own darkness led him to create the Millennium Items, and in the process he sacrificed the villagers of Kul Elna to bring Zorc's power into the world. This shows just how deep Zorc's influence reached. He was able to turn an otherwise powerful and honorable priest into a tool for his dark plans. But Akhenaten wasn't the only one Zorc manipulated. Zorc also used Bakura to gather the Millennium Items and unleash his power. What's special here is that this plan worked out because Bakura was himself so deeply consumed by darkness due to the massacre in Kul Elna. Bakura's own dark nature, brought out by Zorc, made him the perfect tool for Zorc's plans. Akhenaten finally completed his connection to Zorc when he managed to unite all the Millennium Items in the Stone of the Underworld. Through this action, he made a pact with Zorc, receiving a portion of Zorc's soul and his immense power. This turned Akhenaten into the High Priest of Darkness, who pursued Zorc's goals further. Zorc's ultimate goal was to cover the world in absolute darkness, plunging humanity into the chaos they had themselves created by bringing Zorc into existence. Humanity therefore was responsible for their own damnation. It's almost as if Zorc had no other motive but destruction. He was a manifestation of pure negativity that existed in people's hearts, and that's exactly what makes him so fascinating. Zorc exists because humans carry darkness within them. He's a reflection of their deepest fears, greed and hatred. Without these dark emotions, Zorc might have never existed. Zorc skillfully knew how to harness the darkness in people's heart and shape it to his ends. He was not simply an embodiment of evil, but a manipulator who understood how to exploit people's weaknesses and dark tendencies to his advantage. In a way, Zorc was less of a monster and more of an idea. The idea that evil always lurks in darkness. Zorc didn't just want to bring about chaos and destruction, he wanted people to face their own darkness and break because of it. This can be a profound and unsettling concept when you think about it. Zorc isn't simply a villain who wants to rule the world, he is the evil that lies dormant in every person, just waiting to be unleashed. At this point in the story, things get a bit unclear as we only experience a fragmented version of the past through flashbacks. What we do know for sure is that the High Priest of Darkness raised an army of monsters and spirits that fought against the Pharaoh and his priests. One of the Pharaoh's most important allies in this battle was the Egyptian god Obelisk, but even he struggled to stand against the combined power of Zorc and his unleashed army. These dark spirits and monsters were a direct manifestation of Zorc's dark power and seemed almost unstoppable. Another decisive moment in the story was when the High Priest of Darkness managed to control priest Seto. He succeeded in killing Kisara, the woman Seto loved, in order to break Seto's will and summon the legendary White Dragon. This dragon was supposed to be powerful enough to defeat the Pharaoh. However, the dragon proved uncontrollable and slipped from the High Priest's control, ultimately leading to his downfall. In the end, the Pharaoh attempt managed to seal the High Priest's soul along with his own in the Millennium Pendant. This pendant was shattered, which led to the creation of the legendary Millennium Puzzle. This puzzle played a central role in the story, but what happened to Zorc's main body up to that point remains unclear. We don't see him in any of the flashbacks, suggesting that he may have temporarily been forgotten. Another interesting aspect of the story is the connection between Zorc and Bakura. Both Zorc and the Thief King Bakura managed to seal a part of their souls in the Millennium Ring. This act allowed Zorc to be reborn in the modern world, taking on the role of Yami Bakura. This reincarnation took place about 3000 years later, when young Ryo Bakura took hold of the Millennium Ring. Yami Bakura's ultimate goal was to gather all the Millennium Items in the modern world and revive Zorc once again. This led to the dramatic events in which Yami Bakura ultimately played the Millennium World RPG with the Pharaoh. In this game, the memories of Zorc and the Pharaoh replayed, and Zorc nearly succeeded in returning to the modern world. Ultimately, however, Zorc was permanently destroyed by the creator goddess of light, Horakti. An important point here is that although Zorc himself was completely annihilated, the darkness in the Millennium Items did not entirely disappear. This becomes clear in the movie Dark Side of Dimensions, where we see that the character Diva is consumed by the darkness of the Millennium Ring. He transforms into a demonic figure that somewhat resembles Zorc. This shows that Zorc's influence lives on in the modern world even after his final death, and that his dark powers still exist in the world. Before we get to the abilities of Zorc Nechrophades, I want to talk about his appearance, which can look a bit odd to many. Why does the core of evil and darkness have a dragon between his legs that makes him look strange? We actually have an explanation from Kazuki Takahashi, and it's somewhat tragic. When Takahashi reached the last arc, he realized his health was deteriorating bit by bit. Many of you probably already know this, but for those who don't, being a mangaka who has to create a complete manga chapter week after week for years puts immense physical and mental pressure on them, causing some to break down repeatedly. And with Kazuki Takahashi it was no different. He talked about how toward the end he couldn't think clearly, struggled with dizziness and confused thoughts, and on top of that he was coughing up a significant amount of blood daily, which only made things harder on his body. You could say he couldn't complete the final arc with a clear mind. mind, which only shows how strong a person he was, because he managed to finish that masterfully anyway. But yes, Takahashi had to go to the hospital for those reasons, where he found out that he was missing about a third of the blood in his body, which of course explained the entire problem. So, after finally reviewing the last arc with a clear mind, Takahashi realized that Zorc's design was somewhat off and could be misinterpreted. For the re-release of the Yu-Gi-Oh manga, he modified all the panels featuring Zorc so that the dragon head would wrap around Zorc's body, which definitely improved the design. I love this dedication that Takahashi puts into his work, the extra effort he made just so we could fully enjoy it. But that's enough for Zorc's character design, let's move on to Zorc's abilities. Zorc Nechrophades was a being of unimaginable power, far surpassing many other antagonists in the Yu-Gi-Oh series. From his very resurrection, he left no doubt about his destructive intentions. He spoke of an utter darkness that would descend upon Earth, of people succumbing to fear and ultimately facing death. In one of his power-driven speeches, Zorc declared, "The skies will be shrouded in black clouds and the earth will be crowned in terror. A single beat of my wings will strip flesh from the bone and a breath of my lungs will reduce their bones to dust." These words made clear that Zorc's power was aimed at complete annihilation and plunging the world into chaos and darkness. A key element of his power was his influence over the so-called Ka, the Duel Monsters. Zorc was the origin of these beings, which play a crucial role in the series, as they could be summoned and controlled by their bearers, a reference to the modern Duel Monsters. Additionally, the Millennium Items, which are also central to the Yu-Gi-Oh universe, stem directly from Zorc's dark power. These items enabled their holders to make pacts with the spirits from the beyond and gain immeasurable power. Through the dark forces of these relics, it was also possible to summon the dark souls of the deceased as an army capable of battling the god Obelisk. One particularly remarkable and unusual ability of Zorc was his control over time. During the Millennium World RPG, Zorc shows that he is able to rewind time. This power appeared to be limited to this particular world, but later Yami Bakura hints that this ability was indeed Zorc's own, and that he could potentially use it in other realms as well. This suggests that Zorc could rewind and even halt time at will. There's even a hint that Zorc might have had the power to speed up Earth's time, causing the planet to collapse under his dominion. Though this point remains open to interpretation, it demonstrates how complex Zorc's abilities truly are. Interestingly, Zorc faces a counterpart of sorts, Hassan, also known as Shardi. Hassan claims to be the direct counterpart to Zorc. He explains that as long as light exists in the world, Zorc will always cast a shadow, and that shadow is Hassan himself, functioning as a kind of protective force. Hassan's power is said to mirror Zorc's, as he represents a reflection of his darkness. However, as it turns out, Zorc's power is so overwhelming that even in a weakened form he was able to defeat Hassan. Ultimately, control over all shadows and darkness is indeed stronger than a mere shadow. Things get even more interesting when the High Priest of Darkness, who received his power from Zorc, enters the story. The High Priest sees himself as a reflection of Zorc's might, making him stronger than Hassan. In the story, the High Priest was able to revive an army of the undead, so powerful that even the Egyptian priests could not defeat them. This undead army was an impressive demonstration of the dark power Zorc could unleash. The High Priest's strength was so immense that even Hassan was shocked by the seemingly limitless power Zorc had bestowed upon his servant. Zorc demonstrated his might in multiple battles. A memorable moment was when he deflected an attack from the dark magician Mahado, who had previously defeated Bakura's Diabound, a monster capable of taking on the Egyptian gods. Yet Mahado's attack inflicted only minor burns on Zorc's fingers, underscoring Zorc's overwhelming power. In response, Zorc swung his arm, creating a massive shockwave that killed Priest Shadar instantly. This shows that Zorc not only possessed powerful magical abilities, but was also capable of inflicting devastating physical damage. Shimon, the wisest of the priests, saw no other option but to summon Exodia, the most powerful entity known at that time after the Pharaoh's gods. Exodia was able to obliterate the undead army in an instant and focused all its power on an attack against against Zorc. Shimon even sacrificed his own soul as fuel for Exodia's assault, but even that wasn't enough to defeat Zorc. Zorc simply mocked the attack, declaring that no flame in the world could brighten his darkness. He then unleashed his powerful Dark Phenomenon attack, which effortlessly tore through Exodia's beam and sliced Exodia in half. Throughout the story, Zorc appears to be virtually invincible. The only way to stop him was to seal him away, as the Pharaoh once did. Alternatively, it would require the Pharaoh's power and his true name. This pivotal moment finally came when the Pharaoh summoned Horakti, the creator goddess of light. Only through her supernatural divine power could Zorc be permanently erased from existence, or so it was believed. A portion of Zorc's power remained through the High Priest, who was eventually defeated by Kisara and the White Dragon. The White Dragon, also known as the Blue Eyes White Dragon, was considered the most powerful creature the world had seen up to that point, underscoring the level of power it took to end the manifestation of humanity's darkness. Zorc Nechrophades is not only a formidable adversary, but a personification of absolute darkness and evil that lies dormant in every human. His abilities and powers make him a nearly unstoppable threat, one that can only be defeated by the purest forms of light, fueled by bonds and love. That wraps up this part of the Gods of Yu-Gi-Oh! Be sure to give it a like if you enjoyed, and don't forget to subscribe if you want to see more Yu-Gi-Oh! Videos like this. Thanks for tuning in, and see you next time. Bye!